Well, welcome to our women's 1 p.m. Bible study on Exodus. And as always, before we dive into our next lesson, let's turn to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we so much need your presence in our lives, as this prayer list attests to. And we ask that you would listen and hear and deal with these things as we unburden them off our lap and turn them over to you, because that's where they belong. And we're thankful that your word tells us that when we turn to you in prayer, we honor you, we glorify you as the one true God who truly loves us and truly can handle anything and everything we present before you. So we present before you a conundrum, all of the students and the schools and the school administrations as school begins to start in the fall, those that have decided to meet in person and perhaps what they've planned on, the safety plans are not what they should be. Help give them wisdom, help protect those students. Those that are starting at home, enable them to still be able to learn and to have all the equipment and the internet and the laptops that they need. And be with our college students, those that are going to attend class on site, that you would keep them safe. And then especially those that have paid tuition, room and board and food, and are struggling to get that money back, that you would work that problem out with them. And of course, Lord, the answer is lift this virus from our midst. And we can pray for anything, so we pray that. Give us patience to wait until you resolve this problem of the virus in your time and in your way. Be with our sister, Jane Wilson, who has been hospitalized. Be with the doctors, care for her, and be with Mikhail as he worries about her and is with her. Pray that he might be able to be present with her in the hospital, and if not, an open line of communication so he can lift up her. Be with Karen's neighbor's family, the family of Tom, as they're mourning his passing, that you would lift them up through the hope of the resurrection and faith in Christ, and be with his wife as she continues to recover from COVID-19. Be with our sister Phyllis, bring her relief from her back pain so she can return to a more normal life. Be with Vicky, who's not feeling good. Bring healing into her life, help her to feel better. Continue the recovery of Ken Petey. And we're thankful for what the recovery he's had. We ask that would continue without any complications. Same thing for our sister Karen, that you would help her to continue to recover and be able to return to a normal life. Be with all those in California who have become victims of the wildfires. Protect the fires from spreading and damaging any more property, but those that have lost property and possessions, Lord, we ask that you would work to replace them. We're thankful for all the lives that you've saved. We're thankful for the firefighters that are there battling blazes there and also in Colorado. Descend on your hand, Lord, and give them extra strength and the ability to stop these fires in their tracks. Be with those in Iowa who are recovering from the storm. Help them to replace what has been lost in their lives. And also protect those in Louisiana and the surrounding area from these two storms that are heading that way. Your hand is mighty, Lord. You can steer those storms in another direction. You can even make them stop and dissipate them. We just ask that you would be merciful to those people who lie in the path, that you would protect them, that you would keep the damage from being excessive. And then whatever does happen, Lord, be with the first responders that are going to come and pick up the pieces after. Be with our country, all that's going on, not just these problems, wildfires, natural disasters, but also the unrest, the racial division. Help to solve that. Step in, Lord. Stop the violence. Stop all the looting and all the stupidity that's going on. Be with our police. Protect them. Empower them. May they know that we are behind them. Help them to be and use your wisdom and your justice to be fair to all. Bring healing to Carrie and the problems with her foot. Likewise to me, Lord, I ask that you would bring healing to the situation on my foot. And also help me to resolve the problems with my car. Grant me wisdom and grace in that, Lord. We're thankful. We're thankful for the healing that has happened in Karen's life from her physical therapy. We're glad that it works, Lord. We ask that would continue. The same with our sister Rita. We're thankful for the healing that's happened in her life and ask that would continue. Be with Janet and bring healing and improvement to the problem with her eyes so she can see normally and function normally. Lord, bless our blood drive coming up this week, that it would work to provide something that's needed to our community, but also to bring people here and show them what a great and loving place this is, and that you would intercede and impress upon their hearts this is a place where you can be found, that you are here working through people and through means in this place. And also, Lord, we ask that you would bless our preparations for Franklin Avenue Mission next week, that we would be able to help them by providing food, and that we would be able to do so safely and work with the other church to deliver it. And we're thankful for Franklin Mission and all that it does for those in need. Continue to be a blessing in that area through Franklin Mission. Bless our support of it. All these things we turn over to you, Lord, asking for your grace and mercy. Holy Spirit, descend upon us now so we can understand what we need to take from this lesson, and may it draw us closer to you in faith. In Jesus' name, amen. Welcome. Okay. Man, so glad the Lord takes care of these things. This is enough for me just to pray on. We're in lesson 10, and hopefully you all have it there. If you don't, there's extra copies by Faith. Just grab it real quick if she doesn't like to share it. Lesson 10, Laws and Judgments. So the last lesson we've been going through just the 10 Commandments, and now we're going to look at all of those other lessons that we originally read through. We were reading through the chapters in Exodus. So somebody want to read our theme verse and our goal there on the first page.
You are to be my holy people, so do not eat the meat of an animal torn by the wild beast. Throw it to the dogs.
And goal.
We seek to understand the part played by the ceremonial and the civil law and history of God's Old Testament people and how it relates to our lives as Christians.
Okay. I firmly believe that these studies have meaning in each one of our lives, and for each of us it's different. I just want to know which one of you needed to hear not to eat meat from an animal torn by wild beasts. Which one of you? Maybe it was Bentley. Maybe he was
Well, I know how the meat was killed before I ate it.
So we're going to look at the ceremonial and civil laws, and we're going to look at how they apply to us today, keeping in mind that their worship was a looking forward to our worship, so not all of it applies. And then, of course, the civil laws, which would make them from a group of slaves into a functioning nation. And we do have our own laws, and we can see some of the ghosts of some of their laws in ours, but it was a different society at a different time, so not everything is going to translate over. And we'll get into that. What is going on here, which is a question I ask every time I step into this place. As encompassing and complete as the 10 Commandments are, as much as they seem to touch on every part of people's interaction with God and others, the commandments were not enough, at least not enough for Moses and the Israelites in the desert. Moses had taken this mass of people out into the desert. They were away from all forms of civilization. Egyptian laws no longer applied. The people were living in systems of tribes and clans, interacting with one another. They were people in the process of daily living. It soon became apparent that conflict and questions of one person's rights over another's would arise. We're asked to read Exodus 18:13 to 26 and look at how Moses tried to deal with conflict and decisions concerning the people's right, and how successful he was, and then the solution presented by his father-in-law, Jethro. This will be very familiar, but it's still good for us to read it. So a volunteer, as we turn to Exodus chapter 18 to read verses 13 through 26.
Next day Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. And they have a dispute. They come to me and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. Now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God will be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God. And you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, and you will be able to endure, and all this people will go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country.
Okay. So, verse 13, what do we have? Does it sound like anything you guys experienced today?
Yes.
People standing around waiting and nothing's happening. They had their own Secretary of State office, right?
Uh-huh.
Only the take a number system is not working too well. Why? Why are the people standing around waiting to be heard?
There was one person trying to take
Do it
care of
all.
everything, like the Secretary of State.
And why are there so many people clamoring? What do we know about people, not just them, but us?
We're impatient.
We're impatient and we all have problems, right? We all have problems with each other and we struggle to work those problems out on our own.
But they need leadership,
They need leadership.
but they're not getting it here at first.
Yeah. Well, they do have a leader, he just
But
can't.
not, he can't do it.
Well, that's a good question too. Does Moses want to help them?
He wants to help them, but he doesn't, because
He
it's too
can't.
much.
It's too much for him. So the desire's there. It's not like he doesn't care. It's just physically one man can't handle all of the people and all of their problems. And so Jethro steps in, and his great quote is, what's his judgment on the whole scene?
You can't
Verse
do it.
17,
Are you doing it by yourself?
what you
Are
Are
doing
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 not
is
good.
not good. Ron Yankee, who was a deacon, and somebody I was in deacon training with, he's passed on now, but this verse always lives an inch to me because he said, that's my job. He was the guy who would say things in the Michigan district and also at synodical level, and his thing was always, what you are doing is not good, and people did not want to hear that. Because this is the way we've always done it. But what you're doing is not good. I'll laugh with him about that in eternal life. And then, so what happens? What's the result? What is Jethro's plan? What job does Moses still retain, and who takes care of the rest of the burden?
He's like the Supreme Court judge, and then he's got all these other people below him.
In verse 19 and 20, we see Moses continuing to be the mediator for the people. And what else? What is his job? It's not only to mediate, but what does he do besides decisions? He still does what to the people or for the people?
Tell them what God says.
Yeah, teach them what God says. Teach them the commandments, the teachings of God. So that's his major responsibility. And then he's supposed to delegate what to who?
The everyday running of problems to other people.
Right. And who does he pick? Just anybody?
People he trusts.
So I would say
Godly men.
godly men.
Yeah.
It
He
would
picks
be like the elders.
godly men, the elders, right. And they get the cases first. If they can't decide it, like Faith, you had a great analogy there, it goes up and is handled by Moses, who is the Supreme Court. And if you remember when we studied this the first time, we said that God answered that blessing in a certain way, which isn't included in Genesis here, but you can find it if we turn to Numbers 11. we want to read verses 16 to 30. Numbers 11, 16 to 30.
Then the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take some of the spirit that is on you and put it on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you may not bear it yourselves alone. And they say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, for you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was better for us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils.
Let's stop there. There's a little interlude here between what we wanted to study and what we know. It's interesting, though. I don't know if we checked this last time, but people were complaining. They wanted meat. God is the good parent who teaches sometimes negatively and positively. You want meat? I'll give you meat till it's coming out of your nostrils. I'll give you meat till it's coming out of your rear end. Here's your meat. Anyway, Faith, let's skip ahead to verse 24 and read 24 through 30.
So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took some of the spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. And as soon as the Spirit rested on them, they prophesied. But they did not continue doing it. Now 2 men remained in the camp, one named Eldad and the other named Medad, and the Spirit rested on them. They were among the registered, but they had not gone out into the tent, and so they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the assistant of Moses, from his youth said, my Lord, Moses, stop them. But Moses said to him, are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his spirit on them? And Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp.
So what happened with these 70 men? How were they able to help, be qualified to help Moses in the judging?
The Lord gave him the Holy Spirit.
The Spirit descended on with wisdom, power, and strength. That was how they were able to fulfill this. I'm sure they were great and upstanding men, but without the gift of the Spirit, they would have fallen far short of what they needed to do. And, this verse is cited a lot because looking forward, how is this fulfilled in a more grand way? You remember in biblical, numbers are important. And so 7 is a number of completion of God's work on the earth. He completed the earth in 7 days. So 7 is a number of completion on the earth. And when you have an exponent or multiply 7 by the number 10, which is another number of completeness as far as God's working, you have 70. So 70 elders received the Spirit. How was this more completely fulfilled on the day of Pentecost? What did everybody receive on Pentecost?
Spirit.
Yes. So this is just a little foreshadowing of what would happen at Pentecost when God does answer Moses' prayer. Would it not that all God's people had the Spirit? And lo and behold, on Pentecost, we do. All God's children received the Holy Spirit in a way that he had never been with the people before that. Now, this was an interesting question too, something I just noticed. Can anybody tell you the name of Medad's father?
None.
My dad.
Oh, my.
No.
Either my dad or you dad, right? Sorry. So that was the solution, and so
What was his dad's name?
Huh?
Do you know his dad's name?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it was that, but it had to be.
Well, Dad and me dad and Prophet.
Your dad,
Yeah,
his dad.
my dad, your dad. Okay, sorry.
So these elders, we're going to learn the laws that they use to help judge the people of Israel. These are the baseline that they would use. And as with anything, laws are very general, so you do need somebody that can apply them practically to each situation. Things are so varied, I mean, you can't have, well, that's the problem with lawyers and with contracts. They have to spell every little stinking thing out because as a legalistic society, we find loopholes.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard it said where if you depart from God's laws and go with man's laws, that's what you have. God's laws work in a general sense, and you have the Spirit to help apply them. But if it's man's laws, you got to spell every stinking thing out, and even then, you're going to fall apart. Okay, back to our study guide. Isn't that right, Jill? Jill says right. She's got herself muted, but that's not a problem. Okay.
Gary's dog keeps barking, so I muted myself.
No problem. He's a good Pentecostal. He's worshiping with his voice.
Right.
Okay, at the bottom of page 71 there. But even the appointment of judges did not solve all the problems. Questions still remained, and other questions were raised by the commandments, especially questions of punishments for broken laws, and how certain laws apply to situations. What would happen to a person who killed someone? Was the punishment the same if the killing was accidental instead of intentional? What if someone struck a man but did not kill him? What then? What would his punishment be? How would he be punished? This portion of Exodus is an attempt to spell out some of the ramifications of the commandments as they apply to everyday living. We must remember, however, that these laws apply to the lives of ancient Hebrews at a time when all systems of laws were stricter and more punitive than ours are today, which is why in a lot of cases these laws are going to seem strange. That's just how laws were enforced and punished in the culture at that time. And also their society and the way they operate is drastically different from the way ours is. This section is called the Book of the Covenant. Along with the Ten Commandments, it was what Moses read to the people during covenant ratification. It was the stipulations that they agreed to obey. You remember back at the beginning, Moses read them some stuff, and then at the end, he read them some stuff, and they said, yes, whatever you say, Moses, we will all do, we promise. And of course, they needed to check themselves. The Book of the Covenant contains practical laws to guide God's people in living out their covenant calling to be his holy nation. And what we see here is there's three types of laws given in the Book of the Covenant. The first kind is civil and penal laws. These are them becoming a society and how they can live with each other as a society. The second is social and moral laws, and the moral laws are the Ten Commandments. And then also the regulations for worship are the third type of law. It says we will take a brief look at each kind of ordinance. So we're going to start with civil and penal laws.
I don't think I got all of 10 here. It stops at page 71.
Yeah, you might have what was left over from last time, the end
Okay.
of 9.
I'm looking to see what you're talking about.
You should have a page called 72. We're on page
Yeah,
72.
mine stopped at 71.
Yeah, you had the study from last week.
Okay,
It bleeds over into the next study.
okay, yeah.
Anyway, civil and penal laws. Slavery was a way of life at the time of the Exodus. It was a common practice for both individuals and nations to keep people in bondage. The Israelites themselves had just come through a time of slavery. Ordinarily, it was the wealthy who were able to keep others enslaved, but anyone who could afford the price could buy a slave. And we'll talk about this a little more as we go on, but as you remember, should we think of slavery as in American slavery in the South?
No.
It was not the same, was it? And as we're going to see from these laws, even slavery among the Israelites is far different than slavery was amongst other people. So we're asked to turn to Exodus 21. Exodus 21, and we want to read verses 1 through 11. Somebody wants to do that for me?
Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and the children shall be the master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost. And his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever. Ouch. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food or clothing or her marital rights. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go out for nothing, without payment or of money. Whoever strikes a
That's
man, how much?
Right there, we're done.
Okay.
It's verse 11. What is most surprising about the rules and regulations that we find here?
The doorpost sounds like it hurts.
What does that say to people today, especially maybe even men who decide to get their ear pierced? In Hebrew society, you would be considered a slave for life. There's some people, they're a group, a worshiping church in uptown Chicago called Jesus People. And back before seminary, way before seminary, I used to take, Susan and I would take our youth group, and we'd go visit there and work with them. And they were young people. They were centered around Christian music, Christian bands. A lot of musicians were there. Alternative lifestyle, purple hair, shaved heads, lots of tattoos, lots of piercings all over the mouth, except they were dedicated Christians. And they lived kind of communally, not in a dirty way. Single men, single women kept separate, couples in this big giant hotel. And to be a member of that, you would work in one of their business opportunities. They had the second largest roofing company in Chicago. You basically worked for free. You did not get a paycheck. What you did get is you got food and lodging and insurance. And then all the money they make would go into running 3 or 4 homeless shelters, and also an after-school program, and also their feeding of the homeless. So anyway, there was guys there that would have the big, the earrings with the big spacers that they put in, but they did that because that was a sign of they were now slaves of the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound all bad. It's just not my way, but
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
It was a wake-up call. I mean, these are people, you think about it, what it will be like for us to live communally with each other 24/7. I mean, we're friends, and it might sound great to see each other early in the morning when you haven't had your coffee, and I want to use the dryer and you're in my way, and I want to get to the coffee and you're in my way, and it's my turn to go work in the kitchen. You have to be, you have to have faith. You have to have a good faith relationship with the Lord to stay there. And so what you have is a lot of people that are just there for the music or for fun. They leave, and you've got some pretty dedicated young Christians that are there to live a sacrificial life. So it was
That's
interesting.
awesome.
Anyway, straight from our. Why do the laws sound so out of place in our world? Why do these laws sound out of place?
Well,
In what ways?
we don't have slaves.
No, we don't.
And
You don't
I
buy
really
people.
don't like the woman thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about it?
She has no rights. She's either bought by the owner or she gets
I mean,
married.
he's got it so that you can be taken care of, but yet at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
Well, this was not.
One of them could never leave if they didn't have a choice. where the man has a choice. But it says if a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. So she can't leave if she didn't like it.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Let's hit one issue at a time. What does verse 2 tell us?
All right. Serve 6 years and then goes free.
For the
The
7th.
7th year, you have
For
three.
nothing. Remember we talked about this? It had to do with the year of Jubilee and a lot of other things. Not only did you have to let him go through free, he didn't have to pay anything to go free, but you had to make sure that he could live now a life. You had to give him seed money to begin a new life. People became slaves because they fell into debt. And there were no banks to get a loan from. So you would become a slave and you would work off your debt for it. But the thing was, no matter how big your debt was, you're only going to work for 6 years. And then you go free in the 7th. So understanding why people become slaves, that's very, very generous, isn't it? Like, you know, the law, that was not the law in other societies. So this would have really stuck out. This is far different from what other societies were doing. What about verse 6? Well, let's talk about if he comes in married. So if both wife and husband become slaves, they both go out together, which is fair. And then let's get with, if his master gives him a wife, she bears him son or daughters, the wife and the children shall be your masters, and he shall go out alone. They weren't married when they came in.
Yeah,
Okay,
but so
and
does the woman never get set free then?
After 6 years.
It's just the manner.
But if it's the man's turn to go free, she stays and finishes off her time there. Because she came in because someone was in debt. So he would go out free and then wait.
So every year was somebody else's 7th year?
Well, it depended. I mean, it depended on how many slaves you had. If you didn't have that many, that wouldn't be the case. But 6 years you work, and the 7th year you go free. So that's a reason why the wife, well, he didn't come in with a wife, but married her because he met her there. And then, you know, we read later on that if the master is really good, which tells you something, that whole thing with the piercing of the ear, the condition there might be better than trying to make it on your own. I mean, let's face it. It was difficult. You didn't have social services. You didn't have Social Security. You didn't have food stamps or anything. It might be better if you had a gracious master just to stay and work there.
That's only if you have a good master.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, then you're out of luck.
That's right. But if you don't, after 6 years, what happens?
You're free.
You're free. Verse 8. Or verse 7. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she does not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master who has designated her for himself, then let her be redeemed. So here we have the idea, this is kind of an arranged marriage. This is not how all marriages were arranged, but one of the things you would do if you needed to become a slave for whatever reason is you could become the wife of whatever master. And so, you know, if you remember later on, I don't know if we get to it now, but there's the bride price that everybody has to pay. So the father would receive the bride price for the daughter. And what you see here, this thing in verse 8, how does this, well, let's look at it. Verse 8, if she does not please her master who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to foreign people since he has broken faith with her. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, that's not a bad thing. Because he can't sell her off to somebody never to be seen again.
For whatever reason, she had to become a slave. I mean, we don't have slaves. But once again, we shouldn't think of slavery as in the South. And if this is a male-dominated society, women don't have a lot of rights. Does this give rights to the woman that she would normally have? Yeah.
Yes.
Because if he doesn't like her, in other societies, sell her as a slave to the Egyptians. And they can all take turns doing whatever to her, making her part of their harem and demeaning her. And not only does he have to release her, but she can be redeemed. Well, since he paid the bride price for her, probably the father of the family would pay the price back to receive her back.
It's just property then.
In a way, yes, but keep in mind, the reason why this all happened is she was probably in debt.
Well, it might not have been her debt, might have been her parents' debt.
Then her parents have to pay that money back that they got for her because they were in debt. It is a different society. It's hard, but once again, release all of your preconceived notions about slavery in the South. If it worked out, she became the wife of probably a guy that had some money. He was able to buy slaves, so he had some money. And if it worked out, we're assuming there was mutual love, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
Would she be free then in 7?
Yes. Well, if she's married, I don't know. See, it doesn't really explain that. I'm thinking if she's married, no, but she would really no longer be a slave. She'd be more like a wife. Actually, because it does talk about that. We'll get to that, I think. Yeah, verse 11. And if he does not, if he designates her for his son, that's if he's going to if the woman is married to him or the son, he shall deal with her as a daughter. So now she's not a slave anymore; she's his daughter because she married his son. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, clothing, or marital rights. So if he decides he's stupid enough to want another woman, he's going to treat this first one as if she was the only one. And if he doesn't do these things, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. So she is protected. That makes it sound a little bit better. Once again, this is a different society than ours. It's a society that didn't.
That's all they knew, so they didn't probably think like we do.
It is. Plus, think about if you didn't have Social Security,
Yeah.
you didn't have loans, you didn't have a food stamp program, you didn't have all the safety net that we have in this country. And you, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, lose your job, and the bills are coming down. And if not for anything, what do? Go homeless? Go beg door to door? I mean, this is not our ideal. We like our safety net that we have, but they didn't have that at this time. So this whole idea of enslavement was much better than just letting people go homeless and hungry and be abused and become not their kind of slaves, but kind of slaves in the South where you get beaten and you work and there's no freedom. Other questions or comments?
So if you look at some of the Middle East countries, and if you look at other religions and stuff, is some of this still timely for those areas that are more backward?
What do you know about Islam? How does Islam?
Not very good. But
Why?
I don't think they would ever set them free. They don't have that Jubilee 7-year thing.
When a jihadist dies, what does he get?
He gets 70 virgins.
70 virgins. And we all know that this is not true, right? But in Islamic faith, do you think those virgins have a choice?
No.
Women are very much less than men, even today in Islam. In the inner city, when the Lutheran Church and other white churches left, 2 things happened. Baptist church came in, and the black women were driven to the Baptist church. Black men were driven to Islam. Why weren't the black women?
Because they were second-class citizens.
Even less than that. But that really appeals to a male-dominant society. And so, yes, Joe, not just in Islam, not just in the Arab countries, but other places, if you look around, yeah, women don't have the rights that they do in this country at all. It's still very much true. Good. Other comments or questions?
Can you tell if someone's trying to get in Zoom while you're doing that? Will you get a notification?
My head gets really full. Yeah, I have a little, I don't know if you can see it on the screen there. See that, participants?
Okay.
Yeah, it pops
So
up there.
Phyllis said she was gonna try, but she's not in yet.
Yep, I'll keep this up here, but even if it's not up here, I get a little message across the
I
screen.
thought so, but I wasn't sure.
No problem.
She may just not have it downloaded and stuff yet, I don't know.
Good, we'll keep an eye out for it. Go back to our study. Did we get all these? Given the fact that these laws were given in a world in which slaves were little better than things, property to be used and disposed of a discretionary owner, what revolutionary rights were given to the Hebrew slaves? We kind of discussed that. I mean, they did have rights. After 6 years, you're released. Women are protected. Women are protected if they come in married, even if they're not. That was far different than other societies. So let's go to the top now
I
of
have a
page.
question. So
You've already asked
basically,
your one question. I'm
so,
sorry.
so basically, women who were sold into slavery were basically sold into a marriage. That's what this sounds
They
like.
could be, yeah.
Well, it could be, it not necessarily, they could have just been, sell themselves in and become a housemaid for 7 years or 6 years.
Well, women didn't generally do labor. So if a woman was sold into slavery, it would probably be to become a wife of somebody.
Okay.
If she was married, she would be sold with her husband, and then they would remain married. So she would not be into the harem of the owner.
Okay.
These are good. Anybody but Faith have questions?
Come on, Jill, come up with a question.
I did.
Leave Jill alone. Top of page 73. For the Hebrews, questions arose early. In their world, violence was a common way of settling disputes. Physical assaults and punishment were a significant feature of life together. Just what did the commandment forbidding murder mean, and how did it apply if the person struck did not die? How liable was the attacker in cases where murder was not intended and the responsibility was not clear? Read over the answers to some of these questions as given in chapter 21, verses 12 to 36. So that's a little bit further on than where we stopped off. Carrie stopped off at verse 11, so we'll pick it up at verse 12 and go through verse 36.
Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hands, then I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee. But if a man willingly attacks another to kill him by cunning, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. Whoever strikes his father or...
Stop there for a second.
Yeah, that's, I figured you would.
You understand what that meant by taking from my altars? If you were seeking mercy, where would be the best place to go?
The church.
To the altar. In fact, the altar in the temple had horns on it. And throughout the Old Testament, you'll see people grasping onto the horn of the altar, holding onto it for dear life. Because you're appealing to the God of mercy for mercy. And so here, where Carrie read, if he willfully attacks another man by cunning, there is no mercy. You pull him from the altar and he goes and suffers. Okay, go ahead and continue on, Carrie.
Whoever strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall be put to death.
Stop there for a moment. That was the case in this society. Would we need to worry about sex trafficking?
Because you're gonna die if you do.
Is that, in your minds, is that a fair punishment?
Yep.
It is for me. You're going to take an innocent girl and trick her and make her a sex slave to multiple men. Yeah, I think you deserve death. I don't think you deserve to live and need to pay. Once again, this is maybe sinful Mark talking. I don't need to pay for you to live a life of relative ease in jail. Now, maybe if there's going to be a bunch of guys in jail that are going to beat the crap out of you daily, then I might like that.
Boy, the vengeful party is coming out.
That, I mean, that young lady, or even if it's a young man, your life is now ruined forever by what you experience. So it's horrible. I mean, we don't talk about it a lot, but as I think about it, my number one thing I like to address problem in this country is abortion, but sex trafficking would be number 2 in my book. Okay, where did you leave off, Carrie?
16.
Go ahead.
Whoever curses his father or his, I already did that, didn't I? No,
No.
that was killed. Whoever curses his father or his mother shall be put to death. When men quarrel, and one strikes the other with a stone or his fist, and the man does not die, but takes to his bed, then if the man rises again and walks outdoors with his staff, he who struck him shall be clear. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time, and shall have him thoroughly healed. Yeah. Okay. When a man strikes his slave, male or female, with
It's
a
not
rod.
determinate.
Yeah, I knew.
This is not saying when I have a quarrel with Fred, the way we're going to stop it is we're going to go at it fisticuffs. It's not saying that. In fact, there is something to think about. If I injure him or he injures me, I may have to pay. And if he dies, I may have to really pay. So an inherent of these is a good common sense thing. Don't take vengeance into your own hands. But this is an age when there weren't police officers and 911 you could call. So they needed to have rules because these things are bound to happen because people are simple. Go ahead, Carrie. I'm sorry. Keep
When
on.
a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies under his hands, he shall be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or two, he is not to be avenged, for the slave is his money.
Once again, this is not saying, hey, beat the crap out of your slaves.
What's avenged mean? It's not saying he's going to die for killing a slave. It says avenged.
Right.
Does that mean the slave isn't as worth
If the
as much
slave
as-
survives a day or two, that means that he didn't die from whatever the master did. And so the master is not going to be accused of murder. This is not saying beat your slaves mercilessly. Because you work for somebody, are people all, oh, yeah, I'll be your farmhand, I'll be your slave, I'm going to work really hard for you. Is that a human nature? No. So there may have to be some kind of motivation. And this is kind of telling you, if you're going to motivate, you're going to make it physical, you better be careful. You better not just take a rod and whip the crap out of them, because if you kill them, guess what?
You're going to be held accountable.
Yes. And if they get injured, guess what? You're going to be held accountable. But knowing how people are in society, not everybody's going to treat everybody the way they should. So we have to have these rules in case things get out of hand. But keep in mind, by no means is this giving you license to go ahead and beat the crap out of somebody like the African slaves were in the South. Continue on with verse 22.
When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, strike for strike. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys it, he shall let the slave go free because of his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his slave, male or female, he shall let the slave go free because of his tooth. When an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall not be liable. But if the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has been warned, but has not kept it, and kills a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned, and the owner also shall be put to death. Wow. If a ransom is imposed on
Stop
him.
for a minute.
Okay.
Let's translate that over instead of ox. Let's talk about pit bulls
Yeah.
or other mean dogs.
Yeah.
Would this law be very useful in our society
Yeah,
today?
Yeah.
sure would.
Go ahead and continue.
If a ransom is imposed on him, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is imposed on him. If it gores a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a slave, male or female, the owner shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Keep going.
All the way to 36, the end of
Okay.
chapter 21.
When a man opens a pit, or when a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restoration. He shall give money to its owner, and the dead beast shall be his. When one man's ox butts another, so that it dies, then he shall sell the live ox and share its price, and the dead beast also they shall share. Or if it is known that the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has not kept it in, he shall repay ox for ox, and the dead beast shall be his.
What is most surprising about these rules? Anything?
What was that?
They're very detailed, very specific.
Do we need that as humans?
Yeah.
No?
What about the different rules for slaves and different rules for free people? That's a little surprising. Once again, we don't have slaves. That's not a part of our culture. So we're not used to that. And even though I keep telling you, even in my book, I have to keep reminding myself this is not African slavery. This is different. And even then, Hebrew slaves were supposed to be far different than slaves in other cultures surrounding them. And maybe also this idea of the avenger of blood. Remember we talked about that when we read through the chapters? That's why, and here it talks about he'll be pulled from the horns of the altar. Who would come and pull the guy who killed somebody either on purpose, lying in wait for him, or by negligence or like manslaughter, what we consider manslaughter? The avenger of blood, who was the nearest of kin. They were the ones that avenged the death of their family members. Because once again, there's no police department, unfortunately, at this time. So, and another thing we talked about, it doesn't have you read it in here, but we talked about cities of refuge, remember? There were cities of refuge that were placed throughout the Promised Land, on both sides of the Jordan River. And you could flee to one of those cities of refuge, and you would kind of wait there in safety. And if the avenger of blood followed you there, they had to wait until the priest had like a court session and figured it out. And there's also, if you remember, you can only be convicted on the witness of, you had to have two people that testified that you actually either committed manslaughter or murder for you to die. So it was protection for the person. And why would we need that, even though you've got these laws of what's supposed to happen if it's accidental murder, accidental death according to murder? Why do we need to have these laws, and why do we need to have cities of refuge? Because sinful human beings, my brother died, and I don't care. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to punish you, right? And so you have to have these laws just to slow down. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Verse 23 and 24, why does that sound familiar? If there's harm, you shall pay life for life. Eye for eye.
Tooth for tooth.
And
Hand for hand, foot for foot.
why is that familiar to us? An eye for an eye and tooth for tooth, right?
Yeah.
And what is the idea behind that? We talked about this too, but eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, what is the principle behind that?
That it's not to be more than that.
Yeah, that the punishment should fit the crime. If you poke my eye out, you don't get your whole neck cut off, or maybe your arm and your leg, you lose an eye. Yeah, the punishment should fit the crime. It should be in proportion to what the crime was. And so it sounds brutal, but in that time, that's really what it's enforcing. Once again, there's protection there. Because we always want to go too far, don't we? You poke my eye out, so I'm going to bring you down near death. Questions or comments on that? We'll continue on. Question 3. What was Jesus' comment on this principle in Matthew 5:38-42? So why don't we turn there? You want to somehow keep your finger here in Exodus, New Testament, Matthew. Matthew 5, this is a continuation of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount.
An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Somebody want to go ahead and read that? Matthew 5:38-42.
You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who borrows.
How does the law of the Christian transcend the law given in Exodus? What has Jesus inserted into this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth principle?
Give more than is demanded.
Grace. Grace and forgiveness. Do you think Jesus was speaking on a societal level or a personal? Do you think Jesus was commenting and saying, as far as the laws of the land goes, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is out? Think Jesus would do that? Would be highly unlikely, because Paul, who was, face it, Jesus' mouthpiece, the mouthpiece of the Holy Spirit, in Romans 13 talks about government and courts and soldiers being police officers are gifts from God to keep the peace. So, is Jesus speaking and giving a new law as far as how we're going to govern society? What if that was the case? What if we took away eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? Somebody robs your house and instead you're going to go, oh, that's okay. You have everything I want. You killed my dog. You killed my son going in. That's okay. I'm supposed to forgive. Go on out. And that person goes and does that to your neighbor. Is that a good thing? So eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, meaning justice for the crime does what? It's not so much vengeance on our part, but it protects the next person, right? That criminal is going to be taken out of society and they're going to be punished. Perhaps they might be rehabilitated, which would be more along the lines of discipline. I firmly believe there's some that can't be disciplined, so punishment takes them out of society so they don't have it happen again. As Christians, why would Jesus have a different code of ethics for us on a personal level? Why would eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth not be how Christians should treat one another or even strangers?
God says, let him do the avenging. We're not supposed to.
Well, you're here in Matthew 5. Read verse 43 and 44.
Love your neighbor, that it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you.
Okay. So as Christians on a personal level, we're not to seek vengeance. There's no place for a Christian to go out and be part of a what do they call those guys?
Vigilante.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. There's no place for that. So when we mesh these two laws together, Norma breaks into my house. How do I handle it? What do I do?
Call
Tell the police, yeah.
The law.
Am I not? That's eye for an eye, right? You're right. I call the police. But while the police are coming and I've got Norma trapped in my basement or in the kitchen or wherever, I can go ahead and pull her eye out, right?
No.
I can cut her hand off because she used it. No. In fact, when the police are coming, I might want to say, hey, why'd you do this? And if they have a story about why they did it, maybe I pray for them. Find a way to witness to it. I don't take vengeance out on her. I allow the courts to do that. I might even want to speak on her behalf if I believe the story that she's telling me about why she did what she did.
You don't take the law into your own hands, in other words.
No. In fact, put the best construction on everything and speak in her behalf if it's right, keeping in mind that she may need to go to jail to protect other people from what she might go ahead and do. Because we all know Marla, she's just crazy.
Yeah. Scary, yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. The next Bible study I have, one of the things I think we'll talk about, if I'm not mistaken, the next Wednesday evening Bible study after we finish One Nation Under God kind of deals with that. How do we, as the church, function in society with this idea of two different realms? And the church functions by grace. That's what we deal with. And society, country, our government needs to function on the law. So how does we're members of both. How do we separate those two things? And this study will kind of help us with that. Other comments or questions on this? Number 4 says read Exodus 22, 1-15. So let's turn back to Exodus. We'll pick up where Carrie left off at the beginning of verse 22. Read the first 15 verses.
If a man steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he shall repay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But if the sun has risen on him, there shall be blood guilt for him. He shall surely pay. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his stuff. If the stolen beast is found alive in his possession, whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall pay double. If a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed over or lets his beast loose and it feeds on another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own field and in his own vineyard. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns that the stacked grain or the standing grain or the field is consumed, he who started the fire shall make full restitution. If a man gives to his neighbor money or goods to keep safe, and it is stolen from the man's house, then if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall come near to God to show whether or not he has put his hand to his neighbor's property. For every breach of trust, whether it is for an ox, for a donkey, for a sheep, for a cloak, or for any kind of lost thing of which one says this is it, the case of both parties shall come before God. The one whom God condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. If a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or a sheep or has beast to keep safe, and it does or is injured or is driven away without anyone seeing it, an oath by the Lord shall be between them both to see whether or not he has put his hand to his neighbor's property. The owner shall accept the oath, and he shall not make restitution. But if it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it is torn by beasts, let him bring it as evidence. He shall not make restitution for what has been torn. If a man borrows anything of his neighbor and it is injured or dies, the owner not being with it, he shall make full restitution. If the owner was with it, he shall not make restitution. If it was hired, it came for its hiring fee.
Okay. What commandment is this dealing with?
Covet thy neighbors.
Actually,
What is it?
thou shalt not steal. Right? It's all dealing with taking what's not yours and deciding when it's stealing and when it's not. So, for example, if a man steals an ox or a sheep, kills it or sells it, he shall pay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. That sound fair to you?
He doesn't,
Sheep is not, this is not just a pet. This is money.
yeah.
This is food
It's a
for you,
business.
or food or clothing for somebody else. You've taken it, you killed it. Now, not only do you have to replace it, but you have to replace 5 times. Is that fair?
Any sheep that it might produce.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair as far as keeping you from doing that, right? Make you stop and think. But if, and then there's later on, there's, it talks about if you leave something with somebody to their safekeeping and you go away and something happens to it, it gets stolen or it dies, there's laws for that. And we talked about the fact that there were no storage units at that time. If you left, there were no house alarms. So in the kind of houses they built, you could easily dig underneath the foundation or sometimes even dig through the wall and steal what you wanted. So you kept your valuable things in the keeping of your neighbor. And then if it disappeared, there's different laws. If a thief stole it and the thief can't be found, and so we're not sure if that really happened or if this neighbor was dishonest, you go before the Lord. And the Lord decides who's right and who's wrong. Let's see here. Question is the principle of restitution. Do these laws seem fair to you? Why or why not? Would these laws be workable in our society? Let's set that aside for a second and see. Do all these laws seem fair to you? Do any of them seem unfair or strange or something you don't understand? For each one, you've kind of got, if it wasn't on purpose, but it was a mistake. Like the field or vineyard being grazed over. One of the ways that you prepared a field that hadn't been planted was you burned it. And that allows, in a lot of cases, that it enriches the soil by burning it. But you can imagine there is no fire department there, and there's no hoses. So if it gets out of hand and you lose control of it,
And it grazes somebody else's field that was about to be harvested.
then you have to pay. But you don't get murdered, right?
It was an accident.
It was an accident and it's treated as such, but you don't get off scot-free. And then that's,
More of a misdemeanor.
yeah, misdemeanor, that's a good way to look at it. And then there was this, we talked about this when we originally read through. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood guilt for him. But if the sun has risen on him, there should be blood guilt.
What does it mean, blood guilt?
You shed that person's blood, Karen. When I broke into your house, you shed my blood, you killed me, so you have to die. If it's at night. If it's not at night, that's different. And we talked about it. Everybody remember why there was a difference between night and day? At night, you can't see if I have a weapon or what I'm doing, right? Because there was no flashlight. You couldn't just flick a light on and light came. So if it's at night, you can assume that the person meant harm, maybe not just to steal your stuff, maybe to kill you or rape you or do whatever. If it's in the daytime, you can see who I am, you can see what's going on, and the punishment would be different if you took my life. Any other questions on those laws? Anything else that stood out? Let's go to this question. Would these laws be workable in our society? Why or why not?
You can't be guaranteed that everybody's going to think the same as you. Revenge and
People tell a lot of untruths.
yeah.
It would be, in one respect, it would be a great deterrent, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To negligence and also to theft. It would be a great deterrent to breaking in somebody's house at night to know you could be killed and there's going to be no ramifications about it. However, what do we have in our society that was originally intended for good that really, least in my opinion, screws things up. It's a vocation and they make a lot of money for it. And they advertise on TV all the time. And on
Lawyer.
Lawyers are good. They were meant to be good. Do lawyers always function? Good. The fact that they seek out people who have had damages done, especially when it's not willful negligence in medicine, and they seek big payments. Guess who pays that money?
The company.
Everybody raise your hand.
Yeah.
I really liked it that they sued McDonald's over the coffee and Flint.
If the company knows that product is
And won.
dangerous.
But that was over the coffee being hot and it burned somebody?
Yeah, because they put a cup of hot coffee between their legs driving a car.
Yeah, so isn't
It's
McDonald's
McDonald's fault,
McDonald's fault.
because their coffee was hot.
And they didn't McDonald's tell them to put that coffee between their legs, even though most
Yeah.
cars now have a. Yes, definitely.
If you want a warm coffee, no, you want a hot coffee.
There's a point to be made here, and that's it's somebody's fault, but it's not mine, right? Got to be somebody else's fault.
Well, the lawyer took the case and the people listened to the lawyer.
Mhm.
What's wrong with our society? Because it sooner or later, somebody's gonna pay for it and it's not gonna be McDonald's. They're gonna raise the prices so that it covers the cost of their lawsuit.
You're still paying for it.
I know. Yeah.
Or it'll cost more for all of us to get insurance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Insurance companies are not going to pay out on their own, no. So it does have ramifications, doesn't it? Good.
Well, here's an interesting point. If you still had really strict laws, so there wasn't all the stealing, would you decrease insurance rates a lot? Because the only thing that would happen is, catastrophic things for storms and stuff. You wouldn't have stealing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would.
You don't need many lawyers.
I wouldn't have to pay 5 or 6 times more for car insurance here in Flint than I did down in Belleville, Illinois.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. The amount of payment.
If you have that Flint address, you pay higher insurance.
Right.
And why is that?
Because Flint
That's
has
a
a
high crime.
reputation of high crime. Even though you're not in a high crime area here, your zip code is still Flint.
Not just a reputation, they do
Well,
have a higher instance of crime. I mean, you could cite statistics. And the insurance companies, they're not going to take a hit on that because I live in Flint, are they? They're going to make me pay more.
except you're not in a high crime area.
But how do you go about,
You can't.
you can't.
It's too. You're either Flint or you're not Flint. Let's not worry.
But he's not, he's Mundy Township, but
I have, but it's a Flint,
but it's a Flint mailing
Right.
address.
keep in mind that, these insurance companies are statewide, or in some cases nationwide, and they're not gonna go and they're not gonna say, okay, this is the dividing line right here, down the middle of Maple Avenue. No, they're gonna look at big generalizations, which is addresses and zip codes.
Yep.
And that's just the fact of life. That's the way things are. I understand that, but Jill brings up a great point. If we had laws that prevented people from wanting to steal, strict laws, then there wouldn't be that problem, would there?
Problem is, we have the laws, but we don't uphold them. We give them too many breaks.
Yep. And lawyers will tend to go beyond what they were originally supposed to do, which was to make sure justice was done in the case of somebody, that it was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and now it's, if I can get you off, I will. Because if I can get you off, then I'll get, maybe it's the business of somebody else. Them.
Well, those rich bad guys are gonna pay high prices for lawyers to get them off.
If the glove does not fit, you must acquit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I remember somebody made a joke about Nancy Pelosi ripping up Donald Trump's speech in regards to that. I can't remember what it was. I mean, I'm not being political, but it was funny. But it was along those lines. It was something about if the speech doesn't something, you do
Oh,
something.
okay, I never heard that one, but I know what you mean.
Okay, any other questions as far as question number 4? Anybody else have anything they wanted to share? If not, we'll move on to question 5. How was restitution applied in verses 16 through 17? So let's visit again chapter 22, verses 16 and 17, which says, if a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. Does that seem strange to you? Does that seem does that bother you?
Well, if he seduces her, why should she become his husband or his wife then if he's,
Well, seduce, it didn't say
what does it mean seduce?
seduce
What does
is
seduce
not
mean?
is different than rape.
Yeah, well,
It
maybe.
means you've wooed the person in a sense, and
Rape is rape.
You know,
Rape means the woman said no, and I went ahead and did it anyway forcibly. Right? Seduce means, Karen, I come over to your house, and I bring a bottle of wine, and I bring flowers, and I tell you how beautiful you are. And for whatever reason, maybe it's some drugs you're on, you see, not me, you see Magnum PI. Anyway, whatever means,
Yeah,
I coerce you, you're a willing
yeah,
participant.
yeah. Okay,
So that's why it's different.
and I'm yours forever then.
So what does that mean?
That's, that could go both ways. The woman could seduce the man.
It could,
Yeah,
yes.
but that doesn't,
well, it happens.
yeah, but it's not here though. It's always the man's. Yeah. So,
Either way, so keep in mind, virginity was very important then. A good Jewish man did not marry a woman who was not a virgin. And if he found her on the wedding night to not be a virgin, he had a good reason to divorce her. Because it meant she was unfaithful. So this man seduces a virgin, whatever way is consensual. But in mentioning the man, notice the onus is on the man, not on the woman. He's the one that should have stopped it, knowing she's a virgin and not marrying her. When he takes her virginity, now he has to make her his wife.
Well, maybe we wouldn't have so many illegitimate children.
Maybe we wouldn't. Because nobody else is going to want her now, so he's got to care for her. He made that decision. It also tells you, back when Adam and Eve, who presided over Adam and Eve's wedding ceremony? God. When Adam slept with Eve, they were married.
yeah.
And that's true today. And that's why cohabitation is wrong. And pastors, we were taught to take this into account. One of the things we discussed was how do you deal with cohabitation. And in verses like this, and you look back to the beginning of creation, you sleep with a woman, you've married her. You go and sleep with another woman, you've committed adultery. That's how God sees it. Cohabitation is wrong. It's marriage. And so the encouragement we give is you might as well make those vows and honor them before God, because he looks at you as already being married. So you might as well, that's a way of confessing. It's also part of repentance and now promising to live according to the reality that God sees you in now. So this protects the woman. And you have the father, you notice the father has a great right here. If he refuses to give his daughter to this guy, and why might a father do that? Yeah, scum of the earth. He's a biker. He's not going to care for her. He's going to leave her at the first chance, right? If that's the case, the guy who slept with that woman has to pay the bride price for a virgin. So the father's going to get the money that he would normally get if he gave up his daughter, and that will help care for her, because if nobody else marries her, mom and dad die, somebody's got to take care of her. So that money would be set aside for her to live on. And hopefully, like Ruth, I'll remember the story of Ruth, right? Ruth wasn't even an Israelite. And she had a husband whose husband died. And there was a Jew living in Moab, and she's a Moabite. But she comes with Naomi back to Jerusalem. And Boaz meets her. Boaz knows she's been married before, but he takes mercy upon her, and the Lord works in his heart, and he falls in love with her, and he marries her, and now Ruth is taken care of for the rest of her life.
Didn't brother, the family marry her to take care, a widow, then the brother married?
Yeah, there was that
Where she was taken care of, but by the family.
Yes, no, there was the brother of the husband. If the husband died, and his wife didn't produce any children, then the husband, if he had a brother, was supposed to marry her and accept her into the family to care for her. So you have like Steve and Jill, and Steve dies, Steve's brother is supposed to marry Jill and then produce offspring with her, and that's because the offspring take care of the mother when they grow up. You want to have kids, especially men, because the men could work and take care of the family. That's just the way it was back then in that society. Because once again, they didn't have Social Security, they didn't have food stamps, they didn't have any of that.
Widows' pensions.
Let's see here. How does this rule reflect a different society and culture than ours? How are the principles behind this different than our principles today?
We don't have the same moral law.
Compare the idea or the honor of virginity takes in this culture compared to ours.
No comparison.
No, totally different, isn't it? Women that they're not virgins and don't care to be, that are what you would term loose, they're held up in society as being attractive. Certain men go to bars to look for these women who are loose or skanks or whatever you want to call them.
You know, society or the media pretty much ridicules those Christian people who decide that they want to stay a virgin until marriage,
Yeah,
whether you're male or female.
you're made fun of, right?
But that's that just happened within the last 40, 50 years though. I can remember when I was in high school, if a girl got pregnant, you didn't see her for a few months. And it was, now it's, oh, who's the father? It's just different.
Is there the way that they're treated? They were shunned back then.
Yeah.
And that's understandable, and it worked as far as it was a prohibition against it. If you're a young woman and if I slip up and get pregnant, I'm going to be shunned, so it was a preventative measure. But then after it happened, think about how the mother was treated and then how the child especially was treated.
Oh, yeah.
What was the downside to that? What was lacking?
Compassion.
Yeah.
Compassion, grace, and mercy.
Or for the baby, how the baby was thought of. No,
It's not the
not the baby's fault.
So now you're better off, instead of carrying the child to term, is to go have an abortion and hope nobody knows you were even pregnant, right? And so here the child, the innocent child, who, however the mother became pregnant, whether it was consensual sex or it was rape, now is suffering because of the sins of the mother and the father. It's not right.
Well, even in Jesus' day, there were people of Nazareth that was condemning him because they thought he was.
Yeah, he was illegitimate.
Yeah.
Good. We've got one other piece of scripture to read, and we're coming up on time. Let's see if we can finish this at the top of page 74, and then we'll be at social and moral laws, and we'll pick up there next time. So it wants us to read Exodus 22, 18 to 20, which is right where we left off. Somebody wants to read those three verses.
Exodus what?
Exodus 22, verses 18 to 20.
Oh, well, just what we were talking about. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them, they will cry out to me.
Is this Exodus 22?
Yeah.
Exodus 22, verse 18.
18, oh, sorry, I was down too far. You shall not permit a sorceress to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. Oh, that's disgusting.
That's disgusting.
Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction.
Note the offenses that carried the death penalty. Verse 19, what's the offense there that carries the death penalty?
Having sex with an animal.
Bestiality. And why? Why does God take that so seriously?
They got a lot of diseases. I heard that's where VD came from.
Well, I don't think
I
it's
think
easy.
those shepherds used to have some fun with those sheep.
You know some shepherds, didn't you?
Remember reading The Red Tent?
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, whoa, they did that kind of stuff? That was nasty.
Think about creation. Did God create a hybrid between a donkey and a camel?
No.
Each to his own kind, right? And then when everything else had been created, there's a pause in the story. Let us make man in our own image, in our own likeness. By men trying to procreate with an animal, does that stand against that command?
Yes.
Yes, it violates God's natural plan and order of things. Verse 18, you shall not permit a sorceress to live. And connect that with verse 20, whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be voted to destruction. What is a sorceress doing? What does she do?
Worshipping the devil, basically.
Could be the devil, or could be using some other means to tell the future, right? And so you're relying on somebody other than
God.
the Lord God and entrusting your future to them. Kind of committing a power to them that they don't have. Is there any other power or being or person in this world that can tell what's happened tomorrow besides the Lord God? No, not even the devil knows. He doesn't have that kind of knowledge. He can make some educated guesses. He's been watching humankind ever since the fall, and he's very intelligent. So he can make some educated guesses, and he can push some buttons inside people to make them fulfill his will and plan if they belong to his kingdom. But he can't tell the future. He can't tell what you're thinking. The devil cannot read your minds. Only the Holy Spirit can get inside your head and know what you're thinking.
Can the devil
Which is
hear
why
what
I've
we
heard it
say?
say a good, I'm sorry, what's that?
Can the devil hear what we say,
Oh yeah.
but not what we think?
Yep.
Also,
Which is
if
why
we talk
sometimes-
to ourselves out loud, he can hear it then.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
Which is why sometimes silent prayer is not a bad idea. When you pray silently, the only ones listening in is you and the Lord. That's not to say that vocal prayers are not bad. They're good, because that's a confession. You're confessing before everybody that he is God and he's the only one that can handle this. But sometimes when we talk about our personal and private fears and terrors and struggles, private prayer is not a bad thing, because the Lord hears it and the enemy does not. Anybody ever read C.S. Lewis, the Screw Tape Letters?
Yeah.
You see that in that letter? You've got, there's this junior demon, and this is just fiction. But C.S. Lewis picks up on a lot of biblical things about how the devil works. There's this junior demon that's been assigned to somebody to keep him from becoming a Christian, and lo and behold, he does. And so now this demon with more power and authority and experience is telling him, here's what you got to do. You got to pull him back. You got to bring him back into the fold. You got to get him to give up his faith. And so it's telling him how to do and how to operate and all these things. And in the end, the demon's unsuccessful. The man retains his Christianity. That's how it works. He's there. The demon is there listening. And so the devil can only be in one place at one time. So when you're being tempted and there's a satanic oppression about it, if there's evil, it's probably not Satan. If he can only be in one place at one time, he's probably going to be where he can do the most damage, maybe with the Pope, or with the head of Matthew Harrison, or with the president, or with some of the other leaders of the country, where his presence and his influence can really wreak havoc. It's probably one of his minions, and they are there. They're around. And they have a lot of knowledge. And not only do they know humankind, they know you. They know where you've fallen before. They know where your weak points are, and they will press those. Anyway, so that's why the death penalty for sorcerers And then, of course, if you sacrifice to any god other than the Lord alone, you're devoted. What does devoted to destruction mean?
Eternal.
Huh?
Eternal death.
Yeah, you die. You die now and eternal death to follow. Comments or questions?
Reminds me when we were talking about sorcerers and about Satan from Ephesians. We were saying that the devil can only be one place at one time with the minions, and that we wrestle not against flesh or blood, but against authorities, powers of the dark world, against spiritual forces of evil. Would that apply to Satan?
Oh, yeah.
That's where we have the daily encounters.
It's not always Satan, though, because we do have sinful hearts.
Right.
In fact, they're the number one cause. They desire things that always stand against what the Lord wants. But the devil, in a lot of cases, knows what floats your boat as far as your sinful heart goes. And will arrange things, temptations to appear and whisper in your ear. And he can have some influence because he knows you. He knows your weak points. On the other hand, who do you have defending you?
Jesus.
We have Jesus, and Jesus works through angels. We have good angels that are there protecting us, fighting against demonic powers. And we have the Holy Spirit within us that defends us. The reason why you and I can't be possessed as Christians is because you have a spirit stronger within you. And the only way the devil or a demon can enter in is if you open the door and allow him. And you do that by occult practices.
Playing with Ouija boards.
Anything where you open the door and you're looking for help where you should not be asking for help. Voodoo's a big one.
Or if you go to one of those seance things, because you
Seances.
talk to the dead.
Yep. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Onward Christian Soldiers is a great song, right? And I've had a couple opportunities where I could have used it. I haven't yet, but I will. But we want to keep in mind, though, that's been used in the past to by the church to authorize holy war. Onward Christian soldiers fighting in the battle. And as Ephesians tells us, the battle is not against physical people. It's not against fellow humans. The church fights against Satan and his kingdom. And we fight not with contemporary weapons, with swords and cannons. We fight with the Word of God. And we invade and conquer the devil's kingdom when we come with the gospel, and the gospel saves that person, brings faith into their hearts, because then you've invaded the devil's territory. Actually, the Holy Spirit has, and has grabbed them out of the devil's kingdom and placed them firmly in the kingdom of God. That's spiritual warfare. We fight with the word, law, and gospel, as the Holy Spirit uses that to create faith in somebody's heart or call them back from doubt. That's the battle. Church has no place taking up guns or weaponry. We have no place fighting against Islam. The best thing we can do for a Muslim is to get to know them and talk to them. And their God is a very selfish and mean and retributive God.
That's not what they tell you, though.
Yeah, you need to let them talk a little bit, and then just ask them questions. What do you have to do to be on God's good side? You have to pray, and your prayers better be good. They got to be certain kind of prayers at a certain kind of day. And you have two angels. You have angels, that they don't call them that. And it's the angel's job to take those prayers up to Allah. You piss those angels off, and they might not actually either take that prayer up to Allah, or they might not be communicating what you really prayed for. So you'd be in trouble. So you got to make sure you don't make them mad. You've got to give a certain amount of money, or you're on Allah's bad side. And once in your lifetime, visit Mecca. What do we have to do to be Christians? Do we have to go to church?
Just believe.
Do we have to give a certain amount of money?
No.
Do we have to pray?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, not to be saved.
Well, that's true.
Prayer is what we do because we're saved. But just because you don't pray doesn't mean you're not saved. Faith comes from within. Now, if you never want to talk to God, you've got a problem with the work that's being done in your heart. You're fighting against what the Holy Spirit wants to do. It should be a natural knee-jerk reaction when you realize just what faith has done for you, how it's changed your heart and your life. I mean, if somebody was to grab you out of a burning car, you're going to want to over and over again say to them, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's not to be pulled out of the burning car. That already happened. It's your love response to them. And prayer is the same thing. It's our response to the God who has saved us and brought us into his kingdom. So if you can talk with a person who's a Muslim and let them talk about their God, and then you describe your God who loved you enough that he came to earth. He didn't stay up in heaven and judge you on how many prayers you preached. Jesus came down, became a man, gave his life for you, suffered horribly for you out of love. That's what will win the day. If you can communicate that to them, it takes a time. It takes a while. But there's a big difference between Allah and Jesus. The problem is they believe in Jesus, but Jesus for them is just a man. He's a prophet. He was not God. And he did not die for the sins of the world. Anyway, that's a Bible study for another time. I actually have a pretty good Bible study. It's a two-parter. So it's like, I think, something like 14 weeks long. I'm not sure, but it's great. It's hosted by a guy who used to be a Muslim who became a Lutheran pastor. It's got a video side to it. So maybe we'll do that sometime in the future. Keep that in mind. Other comments or questions? So next time we'll meet, we'll pick it up on page 74. And we'll pick it up with that social and moral laws. And that will be in September. Anybody know the date off the top of their
That
head?
would be August 31st.
Oh, August 31st.
Still August, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's right, 24.
Sounds good.
Okay. Last day of August. Good. Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for giving us these words, this explanation of your law. But thank you, Jesus, for interceding in Matthew 5 with the concept of grace. Thank you for impressing upon our hearts and our lives that we are not to be people who seek vengeance. We do need the law. And you've given us a government, and you've given us government officials and courts, and thereby run by sinful men, and we realize that. Things don't operate as they're supposed to, but this is a broken and fallen world. But still, in this country that you've given us, we do have greater justice here than many other places in the world. Help us to remember that, Lord, even amidst all our complainings. Thank you for the gift of this country and for the justice that we have. But thank you more for your love and your forgiveness that works in our heart every day. May that rule our lives and the way we deal with people one-on-one. All this we ask in your precious name, Jesus. Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time.